with spent nuclear fuel. So, guys, tell me, did I have an internet outage again? Because somehow my chat here on my phone reset it. And it tells me that I am in a session of 0 seconds. So maybe you can drop me a line to tell me whether I'm still live or whether... Yeah, it was a short one, a short outage, I see. Okay. Well, nevertheless, this is driving me crazy with those internet outages. 0.55 minutes, Akora says. Yeah. It is annoying and it will stay annoying, and with all those videos fractured, I don't really know what to put on my YouTube channel every time. And they just don't finish their road work. It is going on since the end of August. And the road is still open and dug up. And blocked. Spectre, are we offline? Is my connection bad? The thing is, I don't really know. I'm just going on with my stuff now. I have to just see what will be there recorded and what not. But maybe this will force me in the end to take a break from streaming if they can't get the stuff running. As I can see, the stream is online, but sometimes laggy is a CD radar. Well, and now it is good. It is just annoying, and I think I just have to sit it out and wait for it. So let me show you what this DLC actually has for you to offer. We have rail journeys for the West Coast Main Line, where we just looked into Cargo Line Nuclear. 5 services. You can see I enjoyed them because I already finished them all. So 3 scenarios that are, well, more or less services put into scenarios, because you have some special starting points and end points, and a very limited number of timetable services here in the West Coast Main Line. Here you can see a full timetable comes with it, just like with most of the Cargo Line DLCs. And here you can find your class 20. It says rail freight, but it is actually not rail freight, but it is the DRS, I guess. And it gives you 4 services. 2 of them are in the journey, 2 of them are not. And in the intermodal, from the intermodal Cargo Line DLC, you have another one with this locomotive. Spectre, okay, thanks. Then it's my Wi-Fi. Well, it is still my problematic internet connection most of the time. So this is what happens on the West Coast Main Line, especially the class 20/3. Then we have more West Coast Main Line, but actually the one from Preston to Carlisle. Here they did not abbreviate it, they did not shorten it. Far North Flasks. More listings in the journey, but shorter services here. some shunting services, and here you're typically running a class 47 because we are set here in the 80s, and at the time there was no direct rail services, and British Rail was transporting those nuclear flasks, not necessarily on the cars that are in the DLC here. Yeah, what you can see is those destinations that are typically off the map. Berkeley, what is a power station. Sellafield, what is an infamous facility for nuclear things in Great Britain. The reprocessing plant used to be until 2022, now more or less an object for decommissioning in itself. Rarely that in one spot in the world there have been that many different nuclear installations than in Sellafield. Windscale, Calder Hall. Here's another thing is Heysham Harbour, power station. Kingmore Yard is obviously in the DLC. Valley Nuclear Electric, that is in Wales. For the Vilva power station, for example. And I prepared a little presentation to actually show you where all those destinations are, and so we can talk a bit about what is happening with the nuclear industry in Great Britain at the moment. I think this is a very highly controversial topic, but interesting on the other hand, and can teach you a lot. So Preston, Carlisle gives you also a special timetable where you can find your nuclear services. Typically, I guess here on the normal timetable, where they are typically captioned nuclear, so that you know that they come from this DLC. So, quite many actually that belong to the nuclear timetable. And we will run a 47 later, I think. Also, some services in this DLC have been more or less hidden for the Riviera. There's not a rail journey that comes with it, but on the Riviera line there are like 2 nuclear services hidden here, but they are actually not so easy to find. They are services run with a shed with a class 66, but not all of the different versions, and you can see there are a lot of different versions of the class 66 now in the game, and not all of them, or almost none of them, do the nuclear services. And for that it is good to know that the direct rail services is actually a subsidiary of the nuclear decommissioning agency or authority in Great Britain, so it belongs to the authority that deals with all the nuclear energy in Great Britain, and they have their own freight railway line, the DRS, and this is where the blue class 66s come into the game. And here you can find some services that move nuclear flasks. Gloucester to Ernsettle, and Ernsettle MOD, Ministry of Defense, so that is actually not a power plant that we are surfing here with nuclear material, but a navy installation. And Akura, do you have all DLCs installed at every time? I actually have all of them installed now at the moment. After my forced switch to Steam, Alex was kind enough to bolster me with the missing ones. And so I actually have a full installation now, and still exploring what is layering to what, and how many different versions of a locomotive can be in the game. It's quite interesting to see. It must be 1 million gigabytes. It's actually not that many. There was a time when I had an installation of almost 1 terabyte after a game update and on my Epic Games Store installation, but there was some sort of a problem. And no, it's actually less. It's a couple of 100 megabytes. How big is your Trains in World file now? I think it is like 600 or 700, but I did not check recently. Maybe it's actually more now. So, just to show you those services here. The blue direct rail services, Class 66. Does anyone remember where we got that one from? It is not coming with the Nuclear DLC. We got it from a different gameplay pack. One that was released for the Edinburgh-Glasgow line, the engineering pack, the Engineering Express. Yes, Spectre knows everything. And this is where we got it from. And here you can see that they have a Mark whatever intercity car switched in this consist, and then 2 of the Flask transporting cars, and then another shed. And this one is, I guess, running dead in tow here. For whatever reason, I thought it proper to turn on the lights here and put the end of train light on it. That should probably be fixed, so the lights are on the wrong end. But this can be fixed, I guess. See if we can get it running. DSD. And the brake system, direct brake, apply. The PBL brake system. For some reason it has this panel here for the railhead treatment trains. You need some lights. And on the rear end we don't need lights. Let's see if they are actually on. Someone thought it a good idea to put them to night running. But we're not night running them. Theodore says, that's one thing about having simulator games as hobby. They typically eat so much space. Yeah, they do. They do eat a lot of space. Sometime soon I will install Parallel. The DLCs that I have on Epic Games Store again, to show that now actually all the DLCs should be available again on the Epic Games Store. How fast can I go in Plymouth? I don't remember. 25? Or is it only 15? It is rather 25. It's rather slow at any rate. So this is apparently also a site that you can encounter in real life. Those nuclear flasks transported with those bluish blue Class 66 locomotives. Oh, look what is waiting there. Our steam engine that we all waited for. Can't enter Plymouth. Probably because of us, because we fiddled around with the lights. End times is accurate. Yes, space is not the only thing that it eats, the CD radar. It also eats money and time, but other hobbies do that as well, yes. Also, this service is limited to 60, so all those services that you get from this DLC are rather on the relaxed side. Voyager. DD Raiders, there's a battle of steam, diesel and atom. And Theodora says the physical space is if you're into scale models. Oh yeah, God forbid a man has a hobby. Well, that is true. Oh, why am I going so fast, by the way? Yeah, money is another thing. In my opinion, and I have to tell you that, even as being an ambassador and everybody thinking that ambassadors always fanboy DTG products, I think those DLCs, those gameplay packs, they got rather expensive. And I don't know if I had bought this DLC at release. Had I had to pay for it with my own money. Maybe we should slow down a bit anyway. Now we can go 80, but before that it was a bit fast. True Spectre. That is why I focus on UK content now and try to get the rail scene as full as possible on that. That is one thing. Well, my approach always was to only buy the stuff that I'm really burning for on release and pick up the rest on sale. They are releasing so much at the moment, and there is almost no time to enjoy and play all the stuff, and find the good parts and the good angles, because you're already hyped for the next one. But this, I should say, calls for customers that can manage their own expectations and can see what fulfillment they can get from buying DLCs, putting together different trains in the picture. But it is true, it is getting more and more expensive, and you're getting less content probably. On a typical Train Sim World 2 route release, you got the route, you got one new locomotive at least, and you got one recycled one. For a significant lower price. Then on the other hand, I can understand that it really takes a lot of manpower and money to produce those thingies. So you cannot just call for making them less expensive. But as a customer, you can always choose what to buy and what not to buy. And the nice thing is that you can watch all the content in so many videos on my colleague Ambassador's streams, that you know what you are buying. And CD Raider 6, basically we buy the same game and the same maps over and over. Yeah, well, this is the point. If it is actually an improvement, then I would not really mind doing that. There's two... Oops, no, I can't watch what you guys are saying. There's too much to keep up anyway, at least to me, says Theodorus. Even owning it doesn't guarantee I have time to play it, not counting other games and burnout. Yes. And Akura says +1. I totally agree with that. So, what did I actually want to do? I want to start one service on the Preston. On the Preston line from the nuclear one, and then present you with my presentation. So we can start that in the background and go to the presentation, so that we can look into what destinations are handled in this DLC. Is the... yeah, it is still on automatically. That is actually not what I want, but look at that. That is the better part of the, or at least most of the British Isle. Not to say the better part, because the north of Scotland is missing, and a little bit of Cornwall. So can't say. Aha. Just had to stop the game. Otherwise the scenario would start without us. And what we just looked at was this part of the West Coast Main Line, London Euston to Milton Keynes. Core route for Train Sim World 5. And here, for example, those locations were the off-map locations for our services. Dungeness power station. Here is a nuclear power plant that is, according to my knowledge, actually still in use and operating. Berkeley. ZEGB is, if I decoded that correctly, the Central Energy Generation Board. or generating board, what is an institution of Her Majesty's government that deals with the question to generate enough energy to power Britain, and deals with all the power plants and stuff. So the railway sidings that are connected with power plants and similar installations typically have codes like this. Berkeley used to be a nuclear power station that is, to my knowledge, no longer in use. Same thing goes for Bradwell, and here you have Southminster, ZEGB, what is the siding that is serving this power station. And then on the other hand, obviously Sellafield, that everybody knows, BNF, probably for British nuclear fuels. And what is the site where in the UK after World War II they produced plutonium for the nuclear weapon program to build the same atom bombs that the Americans used on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. And so they needed to produce plutonium 239, I think. And for that they built 2 reactors, Windscale 1 and 2, in a bit of a haphazard way. And over the years, more and more installations around them. Also a big reprocessing plant, or even 2 reprocessing plants for different kinds of fuel, that ended up importing a lot of spent nuclear fuel from all over the world. People discussing that Sellafield would be the nuclear dustbin of the world. People who are a bit older than I am might actually remember an incident in 1957 when one of those Windscale reactors actually ignited, and they had tons of uranium burning in their reactors that luckily they were able to douse with water. So unlike Chernobyl, the reactor did not explode and did not turn the Lake District and Cumbria into a nuclear waste. Yes, and over the decades and years there were scandals and other things connected with Sellafield, and from what you can read in 2022, they stopped actually being a reprocessing plant for spent nuclear fuel, and are now more or less busy with their own decommissioning of the site and cleaning up the mess that was left from especially the early and ongoing attempts to use the power of the atom. And from what you can read, this is extremely expensive, and they have a plan that reaches into the year 2140, and they plan to be done with their decommissioning by then. So, well, that I think you can call a long-term strategy, and this is always so impressive how long it takes to deal with those things. Crew sidings are obviously here. The lighter ones are not the actually nuclear-related targets here, but the targets that we have already in the game. And then this part, the West Coast Main Line, Preston to Carlisle route, Preston, Lancaster, Carlisle here with this little extension to Morecambe. That was a beautiful bay town, and it goes on to Heysham Harbour, and at Heysham there is a nuclear power plant, a power station that is still producing energy with 2 reactors. So from what you can read on the internet at the moment, there are only 5 active and operative nuclear power stations left. And two of those reactors are actually sitting in Heysham. One I think is in Dungeness, and then there is Torness, the one that is still left in Scotland, and what is this called? I forgot the name. Someone here around the Tees area. The other reactors and power stations that used to be in Great Britain are at the moment in a decommissioning phase. So they reached end of life and they need to be defueled and deconstructed, and the stuff, the waste, some of it gets transported to Sellafield to be processed there. Yup. So here Heysham Harbour actually has a power station that is still on. Carnforth is where the services here on the Preston Carlisle route typically take you, and they end there because then you would go here on a line to Sellafield. Only one of the scenarios actually take you on to Carlisle because it says that there are protesters blocking the bridges. And that is a thing that we had in Germany a lot with those Castor-Transporten nach Gorleben. And yeah, highly controversial, difficult questions and difficult problems to deal with, and they take a lot of time. Inspector says 2140, by then Stuttgart 21 will be finished. This is why it is called Stuttgart 21, right? It can't be finished before the year 2100. Otherwise it would be called Stuttgart 20.3 or something like this. Yeah. When it says Valley Nuclear and Electric, that is for the how do you pronounce it in Welsh? Vilva or something like this power station. Kingmore Yard is in the Carlisle thing. And then on the Riviera Line, you connect stuff to Ernsettle, MOD, what is, as it seems, not the power station, not the reprocessing plant, but an installation of the Royal Navy. And what the Royal Navy needs nuclear material for is something that I don't want to examine too thoroughly. And those services connect with Gloucester and Didcot. TC. Container terminal or something like this, probably. Yeah, so those are the locations that appear in the services that are marked there, and you can hear it from my tone of voice. This DLC is actually something like the military one that was released a couple of weeks ago, that make you think a lot about what stuff is being done. And running trains is such a innocent hobby actually, and still it can be connected with things that are so severe and grave, like dealing with nuclear power, nuclear waste, nuclear weapons. Yep, so what we had in our train here was nuclear material to and from Navy base at Plymouth. And now, as I announced direct rail services, the history a bit. What is this railway carrier that has those blue locomotives and the blue liveries? And it was, as I already said, created in 1994 as a private company, and the first locomotives that they run were those Class 20/3 refurbished choppers to move the nuclear flask traffic. And where did it come from? It was a subsidiary of the British Nuclear Fuels, at the time PLC, private company, BNFL, that started its existence as a British Nuclear Fuels Limited in February 71 as a demerger of the United Kingdom Atomic Energy Authority, the UKAEA, that was created in 54 as the body that deals for the government with all things nuclear and atom related. And this body that was demerged out of this UKAEA, they created their own railway carrier to transport their Flask traffic. So it was not tendered, it was not given away or subleased or subcontracted to some existence. And yeah, and Spectre says, true, I would not buy a livestock cargo line for that reason, for example. Yes, that is the thing. I know it is only bits and bytes, but still, and Aqua shivers. Yes. So, British Nuclear Fuels, not British Nuclear Fools, but British Nuclear Fuels, they created their own railway line, maybe for that reason. And before that, British Railways was doing it, and this is why we have those services on the Preston Carlisle line, representing the time when British Railways was doing the nuclear flask traffic that we have in this DLC. Interestingly enough, already 3 years after being created, they branched out with this direct rail services carrier, and they did milk traffic, so they transported milk. If you are a bit more inclined to see things the bad way, then you can think that is connected with the fact that if you have a nuclear disaster, the first thing that needs to be thrown away is the milk that is produced in the area that can be hit by the fallout. So this is actually almost the core business of a nuclear business train running company, or that was not the point here. This is actually milk traffic that they created. British Nuclear Fuels at the time bought a lot of private companies, for example the Westinghouse Electric Company that did a lot of nuclear technology, and they bought the nuclear business of Asia Brown Boveri, Swedish company that we know RBB from constructing electric multiple units and locomotives in Germany in the 90s, especially when we will get the 145. This is ABB design. Later merged with Adtranz. Without the nuclear business. The nuclear business they sold to the British Nuclear Fuels. And in 2002 they branched out even more and started intermodal traffic, and this is where we have those engineering express services resulting from, and they used 66s, 66-0 and 66-4, and this grew over time more and more and more and more. In 2005, British Nuclear Fuels stopped existing as such, but was more or less integrated in a new body, the Nuclear Decommissioning Authority, and you can see that here the focus on dealing with nuclear things is getting more and more to the decommissioning, cleaning up the mess instead of using it to produce fuels and energy. And British Nuclear Fuels more or less then got packed into a subsidiary of this Nuclear Decommissioning Authority as the British Nuclear Group. And the DRS, the Direct Rail Services, was also a subsidiary on the same level under the Nuclear Decommissioning Authority. In 2006 they started to run the Tesco Express for the supermarket And since 2007, they also go into passenger services, mostly charter though, and support services like pulling electric locomotives along diesel tracks or standing in, providing locomotive traction power when needed, doing railhead treatment trains, all that stuff. So no regular passenger services, but a lot of supporting stuff, and you can charter. They also bought a rake of passenger cars that they can be used for those purposes. And they also did the Northern Belle, I think, a luxury train that was pulled by DRS locomotives. 2014 they got new locomotives. In the meantime, they had a lot of different locomotives like 37s, 47s, 57s, also a couple of Cromptons, 33s. And in 2004, they modernized their fleet properly and got those locos, Stadler Eurolight diesel locomotive and Stadler Euro dual system locomotives as Class 68 and Class 88. They are not in the game, obviously, unfortunately, because the liveries, in my opinion, are actually quite pretty and the locomotives are interesting. Looking at how forthcoming or not forthcoming Stadler Rail has been in the past years with the train simulating or simulation community, I highly doubt that we see those locomotives in the game anytime soon. But this is what you can expect nowadays to see on the tracks. They still have some choppers, modified choppers. They still have some 66s, but especially those 68s and 88 locomotives that they run. In 2021, the DRS got more or less merged or put under a new management, the Nuclear Transport Solution it is now called, where they put international nuclear services that deals with transporting nuclear waste and nuclear fuel and nuclear things around the globe. So an interesting topic, a difficult topic for me, especially because obviously it is really interesting or attractive to have some energy that does not rely on carbon and stuff, but the problems that result from it and the times that you have to oversee and how long you have to plan for dealing with the fallout is just beyond imagination, actually. So, and Akura says, where do I know Stadler from? Some famous loco or Dosto or something? Real photos in Tiger's presentations at CD Radar. Yes, sometimes I put them in. This is because I like them. And Stadler, well, in the game we have Stadler in the what's it called, in the Sursee, Luzern Sursee DLC with an EMU, and also with the, what's it called, the Allegra, right, on the Bernina line. Those are, if I'm not mistaken, Stadler trains. And Stadler Euro Light and Euro dual locomotives are actually quite prevalent on European tracks. From Switzerland, also those locomotives, the 68s and the 88s, are not built in Switzerland but in Spain. They used to be Foslo, Valencia, I think, before Stadler took over. Okay. You might know that in Germany a couple of years ago, the government decided to end any nuclear power production. It is still a debate whether this should be the end of the world and whether we should pick up building nuclear power plants again. In Great Britain, from what you can hear, Scotland more or less is phasing out its nuclear energy. They still have one running reactor, but they are not planning on building new ones. The UK more or less has a strategy of saying, well, we want to build new ones, but they don't really go through with it. We'll see what this all comes to. Now let's run some trains. Welcome aboard 6Z53, set alongside Morecambe station. Once the wagons arrive from Heysham Harbour, you will need to couple up and prepare for departure. Alright. Need wipers. So we are here on Morecambe station, that little side track that we have in the Preston Carlisle DLC. Look at that. Isn't that sweet? At least they gave us a loco with a dog that is named after a dog. I need to acknowledge the AWS system. Okay. Complete final checks. Ready for the trip. That is an interesting point. There you have something like this. Allows. And here are our wagons. Spectre loves it. Gronked in. Here they come, 3 Flasks containers and 2 intercity cars around them. That will be our signal here probably. And it is actually clearing. So what's wrong? What did I do? Or did not do? Oh. Somehow I did not release the brakes as it seems. Stadler Flirt, yes, Juniper, that is also a famous train. Stadler Flirt, Stadler Kiss. Those are trains that you might know from experience. Yeah, That's it, thanks, says Akura. Thank you, Juniper. You hit the spot. Incinerator. Is there a limit at which you can consider this signal clear? What now? Now, what happened to my... to my indicator? Okay. Request permission to return to the station. Let's see what they give us here. Contact the signaler. Yes. They let us in with the little subsidiary signal. CD radar is very exact today. Is there a limit at which you can consider the signal clear? Like, I suspect it's only 44.5 degrees and not 45. So he would consider it a stop signal. It's a problem that we have with a lot of those bladed signals, right? With most of the semaphore signals. But I guess 44.5 degrees is enough. Gronk is already going, or what was that sound? No, he stays here. So, now we should stop before we actually try coupling up. Because we have to make sure that we got the correct coupler. I mean, in an accident the company would do everything it could to blame the driver, so they would have to pay yeah, so they wouldn't have to pay fines. That might actually be the case. So, here we have a screw coupling. Here we have a buckeye that does not work. We need a screw coupling here. Why did you not go? That's okay. We're just running empties down to crew today, and no doubt we'll be ferrying back to Sellafield soon enough. Yep. I have no doubt. Stop at Preston. We still have to wait for the signal to change. Because this 101 is probably going across our path. I have to look it up what this guy, this dog, did to have his own locomotive. Jimmy Mile. Okay. What would you say, City Radar? Can we rely on that signal? They are sometimes a bit reluctant to release those brakes, aren't they? And they are quite heavy. So, even though we are only 100 yards long. And there is not much. Driving over speed limit. What is wrong? 17? Probably because we were going backwards. Maybe a livery in memory of your dog would be nice. That's true. But I had a whole funeral train for my dog, Juniper. The tribute to Chile. With a glossy black Jubilee steam locomotive. And matty black Mark I cars, I think. First class for the funeral guests. But you're right. Maybe for the 2nd anniversary of her death, I should make a new livery. Is it red or yellow? Sometimes it is really hard to see, but I think it is yellow. It is yellow. Do you still have a dog now? Asks Juniper. We have a dog still. It's AJ's dog. Theodorus, I'm heading out now, already feeling sleepy, so I wouldn't dozed off like last time. See you all around. Theodorus, so great that you were here. Have a great night. No source states that origin of the name Jimmy Milne. Okay. Then we have to dig deeper. So what is the problem? Why am I only getting 35 points? All the safety systems are on, aren't they? Driving on the speed limit, only 35. Maybe I'm driving from the wrong locomotive. And here's our SPAD. Because I was not paying attention. Signal before I was paying attention didn't decide whether it was a red or request permission to return. That was the last thing that happened here. Beep. Okay. Mark them down. This was a real spat because I did not pay attention at all. Oh no, no, no. This is one reason why you should not have drivers work for so long. Only empties, only half severe. Well. It's a bit their own fault because they are not giving me my proper points. My 4th spat this year. Oh god. That's a bad year then. So, okay, they gave us the supervisor now. To check if we can do it properly, so they don't have to retire me prematurely. This train is the cause probably, and the reason why the signal was red in the first place. So, can we go? We can. At least we kept our locomotive. And see, the radar found it. Class 47, number 47635. Jimmy Milne is named after Jimmy Milne, who was the General Secretary of the Scottish Trades Union Congress. Okay. So he was not a dog. And I could ask a guy or the dog. Well, so I wonder, a dog secretary's inspector, nice, yes. Another 101 coming in. With the improved smoke physics. So this is the signal where I still paid attention last time. And we agreed that it is only a yellow one. And then when approaching Bear Lane, or what is... It's called Bear Lane, right? Yes, Bear Lane. And then I did not pay attention. Yeah, and there is no AWS apparently when going out. And going in, you just saw an AWS magnet on the other side. Hey us everyone, Red Leader, long time no see, nice to have you in the chat. Akura, oh yellow, next is red, then now you know. Yeah, I should have read the tips that always come up when you power up your game, right? But something sent my brain on a different avenue. And there it was. Yeah, can't watch streams as much as I would want to, says Red Leader. Well, all the better that you're here now. But there is actually an AWS magnet spectre, right? Maybe it is not active. No, it's not active, as it seems. Now he wants a drive-by. You can have it. But what is that here with my... Is that a loco that does not have AWS active? I don't really understand it. It should have an lever here. There is something wrong. Normally this lever here you should be able to operate, but you can't. Is there anything? Aha. On the other side it works, but not on this end. Weird. Inspector says if I did not know better, I would say AWS is not turned on this loco. There's a lever that is hard to find on the left. Yes. But you agree, right? Here on this end, this lever is not only hard to find, it is not possible to touch it, whereas here it is. And it needs to be put into upright position. And Red Leader says, I never remember what is the order to move those levers. Well, I guess you first have to unisolate it and then turn on here. Stand by, says CD Radar. Drive by in front of red signal is hilarious, says CD Radar. Yeah. We have to finish the drive by as soon as the signal has changed. And it cannot be switched with the hotkeys either. Inspector says had the same issue. I think it was there in the end, but not sure anymore. Well, this one is not here. This is the lever. I can totally see it. Don't worry. Just wanted to see the train. I will do that as soon as we can roll, and here we can roll again. The previous red signal had a drive-by. Even though it did not pay for it in channel points. So this is our train in the drive-by of the Flask wagons. And Red Leader says maybe you can only move the levers when the levers in the other cab are in the correct position. That is possible. Let's check it out. Now that we're here at Bear Lane, we can check it out. So switch this one off. Switch this one also off. And let's check it out. Now I have off and isolated. Off, off, shut down. This cap should be down. Does not seem to have any effect, I think. So turning the changeover lever on here is probably not what we should do. Here. Now this lever is blocked. This makes sense because you should not have both changeover levers on, because you can't activate both caps. But you should actually be able to unisolate the AWS on both ends. And no, Akura, they don't move using the hotkeys, at least not on my end. Bug on some 47 apparently, yeah. Don't know where we got this one from. With scenario, it's always a bit of a gamble. So our nice doggy locomotive seems to be bugged. Well, let's drive this train to Preston and have a good night's sleep. And red leader says I'm reading both should be off on the cab you are leaving, yes, and on in the cab you are going to drive. This is what I had in the beginning. But there is still no way to move them here on this cab. So this poor guy is always standing here in thunder, lightning or in rain and tries to fix his installation. Now I should be at 25 exactly. But not forget that there is a 10 miles bottleneck. At least we have green signals now. So all the trains have to wait for us. We're actually keeping the intercity there. But now we can go a bit faster. I think this was a complaint. Approaching Lancaster from the north. See the castle coming out of the mist. I might have said this before, but this Preston Carlisle DLC is one of the greatest route DLCs that they have. It is super big and super pretty. Still getting this. Red Leader says he did not get this one yet, but I have the previous Preston route from Just Trains. The branches one, the Blackpool branches. Yeah, this is also a really good DLC. And soon we are about to get the Crew to Preston or Preston to Crew DLC that is supposed to fit with this time frame of Word. And the 86, albeit expensive, that is the thing. That one is really good too. This is really the two, yeah. The thing is, these smaller packs and loco DLCs, they really got expensive. And Relita says, yes, it is coming somewhat late compared to the previous Just Trains rules, and Juniper says the feature I need the most is better save games. Let me save multiple at a time. I don't have the time or attention to sit through an hour plus of driving for all of the rides. Yes, that is definitely a thing that would improve the game a lot. I think they are really happy that they got the save game as good as it is now. It used to be much worse years ago, and it is still not perfect. And I don't know why it is so difficult to make multiple save games. But I can feel you on this. Sometimes I save my game and think, okay, let's go to bed. Next time I forget that I started a service already, start a new one, save it over, and then I oversaved 2 hours in the service maybe, or something like this. I think the reduced save games are that way by design, says Red Leader. What do you think is the design or the ruling idea behind it? Not that they can't have multiple saves, they just want you to finish your voyages before you start the next. Okay. Maybe that's right. I don't know. Juniper says, let me do 15 minutes of a few services and then save them all and come back later and do it again. Also, says Red Leader, if they update the core, your save games could stop working, and if you have many save games, you would be pissed. Probably. Well, that's probably a thing. I think I remember in the times before the Creators Hub, people changed custom-made scenarios by switching save game files. Don't know if that is still a thing. when you're only going 60 max, you can enjoy the scenery even better. And I find this really great for winding down after a long day of work. Yes, as Red Leader, you can probably just exit the game and move your save game file around and it will work, but as you did it yourself, you can't complain to them if it doesn't work. Well, that's the point. Juniper says if I can, I just copy my save game files, like an easy feature to implement for them to have multiple. If that is true, then it should actually be easy to implement that. So do we still have 13 miles to Preston? Red Leader says, yeah, it is not that it is difficult, they just don't want it for whatever design reasons. Maybe the ones I said, or maybe they have their own reasons. Well, I will ask them next time. At the next office meetup. So next week, as it seems, we're getting another release, and actually a Just Trains release with the Transport for Wales Pacer, giving me the opportunity to finally play the Welsh DLC, Route DLC on stream. Maybe the thing is that, at least in theory, every train journey comes to an end sometime. The save files will still be there. By having only one, it makes sense to complete and then start a new journey, not leave open 10. And Red Leader says there are posts in the forum asking for multiple save games frequently. If they are not doing it, I'm sure they have a very good reason from their point of view. Yes, I can see your point, Spectre, and it makes sense. Most of the time when I save a game, I never resume it but start a new one, or even play the same service again, because it just feels more satisfying. To do it in one go. But this is actually, well, not really a proper reason not to give it to the community if the community wants it. And if you give the community what it wants, then they, or we, probably buy more games and more DLCs. So I always thought this is connected with how troublesome actually the one save game is. Eight miles to Preston. So now we're actually getting closer. The track is getting more curvy. more train waiting in the sidings. Steel train. Supervisor is still with us. Now we can almost prepare for slowing down. Soon we get to see Saint Walburg. And then it depends on where we are going, what platform. How fast we are allowed to be. Imagine the AWS horn. Single yellow. those sidings here on the left are really slow. Maybe aim for 15. Acura, be careful, double yellow on a left switch indicator. So here we are at Preston. Didn't go into the sidings on the left after all, but we're going into platform number 7. But we're not stopping at the platform. Proceeding to the red light, passing this diorama of workers constantly working on the rails. And that's it. At any rate, no speeding penalty. Well, guys, that was that. The nuclear cargo line DLC. And just like that, we made it to Preston, the stream path. Thank you for the stream today. Thank you guys for bearing with me. Hope to see you next week when we are unboxing the Transport for Wales Pacer, most probably. And just one red light today, says Acura. Yeah, the 4th this year. It is really getting out of hand. Yeah. Whether you want to buy the nuclear DLC, it's as always up to you. I probably would have not picked up on release. Nevertheless, I enjoyed the services, and it is probably the DLC that I have the highest percentage of finishing since it came out. And yeah, too many releases in Red Leader's opinion. It is definitely so that you cannot really aspire to have all of them. It's getting a bit like Train Sim Classic, where you cannot have hundreds of DLCs. It is good that you can choose, and so I encourage everyone to choose and pick out the ones that you really like, and then play it and enjoy it, and then buy more, instead of buying and not playing and buying and feeling bad about all the money that you spent. And Red Leader says, I used to buy most DLCs, but can't do the same at this pace. Yeah, I can understand that. And see the West Coast Mainline, Flix Train. For example, we never played the Flix Train again. We did it once, and so it is. Okay. On the other hand, I really like that they do those niche stuff, going into military trains, going into nuclear trains, so that we can get the broader spectrum of what railways are actually doing, and where they connect to other parts of the industry and stuff. Yeah, well, make the best out of everything and be nice to each other. Thank you guys, and see you around. Bye bye.